my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, which is Eddie Garcia, a friend and still a community activist. He's involved in so many things. He has a successful career in government, business, education, and community development. After a massive heart attack in 2010, Eddie embarked on a fight for his life. He used the power of hope to overcome a decade of living with heart failure. A successful heart transplant in 2020 inspired him to publish his memoir, Summers in the Waiting Room, Faith, Hope, and Love. He's also an author of the Mexican Heritage Plaza, a symbol of resilience, perseverance. Eddie lives in San Jose with his wife, Sandra. They have 2 adult daughters. Eddie served in the education community at Eastside Union High School District, board of trustees from 2006 to 2010, including term as board president in 2010. During his tenure at Eastside Unified High School District, he spearheaded the A to G initiative, and unfortunately I don't know what that's about, but he'll maybe touch on that a little bit. A policy that made college entrance requirements the district's default curriculum. Excellent curriculum. Let's see. He also led an effort to save after-school sports programs during the 2006-2009 recession. He is co-founder of Latino Leadership Alliance, a leadership academy established in collaboration with Stanford University's Center for Comparative Study of Race and Ethnicity. In 2011, Eddie was inducted to the Eastside Unified School District Hall of Fame. He is a recipient of the California for Justice Award and NAACP Freedom Fighters Award. Please join me in welcoming Eddie.
Thanks, Raul. Man, it's been a long, long time.
Yes, it has.
Yeah. I got a story to tell you. And I hopefully I tell it in this book. This is what I plan to do for the next 10 to 15 minutes or so, is I'm going to read the prologue to the book, or parts of the prologue to the book, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the story in the book, and then take questions. So if that's okay with everybody, let me get started with a little reading here. The prologue. September 9th, 1999 was a beautiful day in San Jose, California. A large crowd gathered for the dedication of the Mexican Heritage Plaza, the city's most ambitious neighborhood cultural arts project. Although the first day of autumn was less than 2 weeks away, clear skies, a light breeze, and a comfortably 74 degrees blanketed the plaza. There was a sense of excitement, accomplishment, and relief that this day had finally come. It was as if the gods conspired to create a perfect day for the much anticipated consecration of a living, breathing monument to the city's Mexican origins. When the 1,000 or so people settled into their seats, Santa Clara County Supervisor Blanca Alvarado stood and walked up to the few steps to the stage to address the gathering. The audience included San Jose's political class, community activists, neighborhood leaders, and other guests. When she approached the podium, Alvarado opened her comments with equal parts passion and eloquence. She said, "To be here with you at this special dedication is to stand in awe and wonder at what we have accomplished in the spirit of community. To stand here is to feel free at last from the stinging rejection that so many of us have felt for being Mexican Americans. To be able to speak our language and to experience our cultura in its many forms is to claim our right to be." With that opening flourish, Alvarado brought to life the city's Mexican roots, which white Americans had dismissed since their arrival in the late 1840s. Through the 20th century, the handful of historians who wrote about San Jose's history ignored the ethnic Mexican experience. While historians erased ethnic Mexicans from published historical works, the Mexican community of San Jose continued to thrive. Beginning in the early 1950s, ethnic Mexicans unsuccessfully attempted to establish a cultural center to celebrate the city's Mexican birthright. Proposals from the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s faced institutional roadblocks, financial challenges, and community divisions. Ultimately, none of these projects emerged beyond the ideal phase. Despite efforts by generations of San Jose's ruling class to marginalize the contributions of ethnic Mexicans to the city's development, a group of Mexican American civic leaders overcame seemingly impossible odds in the 1990s to build a state-of-the-art Mexican cultural center that would become a symbol of Mexican American resilience and perseverance. And that's the end of the book. And that introduces the book. So, I got my little outline with me. So I'm a San Jose State trained historian. I studied history at San Jose State under, I think, one of the best research and methods professors that was ever at San Jose State. And but I will talk about my career, and I didn't teach, and I didn't write history. I did a whole bunch of other things. When I had a chance to write my first book, my memoir about my heart journey, I used all those skills I used in the history department to stitch together the story. Because the story takes place in the summer of 2010, and I spent most of that summer in a coma. So I had to use those historical research and method skills to come up with the story. When I had the opportunity to write this book, and I want to thank Dr. Martinez and the La Raza Historical Society for having the confidence in me to write this book and publish this book. I knew I could use those study skills that I learned in college to write an actual historical book. So this book is not just, and I don't mean to minimize that, it's not just a series of oral stories about, oral history about the Mexican Heritage Plaza. I interviewed between 20 and 40 people, and I connected those stories with the actual documentary evidence to put together this story. So this book is a bona fide historical study of how this facility came to be. Now, does everybody in here know where and what the Mexican Heritage Plaza is? Right. It's a $35 million facility, and those are in mid-1990 dollars, on the corner of Allen Rock and King Road, and in the heart of San Jose's working class Latino neighborhood. Now just think about that. Think about that today, to get the city to make that kind of investment in that neighborhood. It's stunning when you think about it. It's stunning. And so what I did to start this story is I wanted to lay down the foundation of who Mexicans are in San Jose. One of the first things historians do as they start preparing their work is to do a study of past historical works on the subject. So the subject here is San Jose. And San Jose has been around for almost 250 years as a civil city. But there's very little written about it. In fact, there's one book that's considered the definitive history of San Jose. It's called The History of San Jose, written by a man named Clyde Arbuckle in 1985. So let me tell you some of the things that Clyde Arbuckle did not include in his book. We'll start with the first thing. Arbuckle claims that the Spanish founded San Jose in 1777. Technically, that is correct. This area was under the governmental body of the King of Spain. What he didn't write was that the 66 settlers who actually settled here on November 29, 1777, were all from Mexico. All 66 were born in modern-day Mexico. Sonora, Sinaloa, Jalisco, Puebla, Mexico City. The Spanish captain, the soldier who led the expedition, was born in somewhere near Tucson, Arizona today, which was Sonora and Mexico. And guess what? So was his father and his grandfather. So there's a historian from the 1920s who came up with this concept called the Spanish Heritage Fantasy. And California is a perfect example of Spanish Heritage Fantasy, because Californians wanted the community to believe that California and all of its cities began at the American era. But when people realized, well, no, it's been here longer than that, they created this Spanish Heritage Fantasy, that the Spaniards found this place. But the fact of the matter is, it's not true. 66 pobladores settled on the banks of the Guadalupe River on November 29, 1777, and they were Mexicanos. They were ethnically Mexican.
And indigenous.
And indigenous, that's right, from Mexico. That's right. So that's the first thing that Arbuckle didn't tell us. The second thing he didn't tell us is that the first major industry in San Jose was run by Mexicanos. And I tell the story of one man. His name is Jose Antonio Chaboya. For those of you that know where Chaboya Middle School is, his ranch was right in the Chaboya Middle School is like in the center of his ranch. He was the largest landowner in San Jose's history, I believe. I've looked far and wide to see if there's any private landowner that owns more land than him. He had 24,000 acres that was granted by the Mexican government. He was born in the Pueblo de San Jose. He was baptized at the Santa Clara Mission. His parents were born in Michoacan and Sinaloa, as were their parents. So the largest landowner in the history of this city is a Mexican-American man. He ran the biggest cowhide and tallow trade in the world. He traded his hides and tallows. Ships would come in from Europe, from back east, to buy his stuff at the San Francisco Bay. But it didn't turn out very well. There was this little law when the United States came into being called the California Land Act of 1851. Here was the purpose of that law. When Americans came for the gold rush and they found no gold, they said, hey, I heard you could plant a lot of stuff down there in that valley. So they came down here to start planting, and they set up shop, they put fences, but they were on someone else's land. They were squatters. So when California became a state, a U.S. senator from California created the California Land Act of 1851 to solve that problem. Well, guess how the problem was solved? Chaboya ended up losing 90% of his land. He had to sell land to pay lawyers. He had to sell his land to the squatters that were already there, so he didn't have to pay more lawyers. So when it was said and done, he ended up with 2,200 acres, he and his family. Here's another thing, and Arbuckle does not mention one thing about that in his book. Here's another thing that Arbuckle doesn't mention. The second biggest industry in San Jose was the quicksilver mining industry. Up here in South Almaden Hills, it was quicksilver mining. Here's real quick what quicksilver is. It is it's a chemical that helps clean gold off of rocks and dirt. And it was during the gold rush. So somebody made a lot of money. But guess who mined all that stuff? 90% of the miners came from Sonora. Some came from Chile, but 90% came from Sonora. And when the Americans finally bought the mine, things got worse for them. Can I see a little pattern going on here? So let me tell you one more story that's further into the future. That when I was doing the research, I was stunned, but excited about. During the mid-century here in San Jose, there was a robust, middle-class Mexican-American Latino community. Shop owners, barbers, doctors, dentists. They lived in their own community west of Market Street. It was a bustling, humming community. They had 3 dance halls. They had major acts from Mexico coming in, from Cuba and other parts of the Latin American world. They had 4 or 5 movie theaters, the first-run movies from Mexico and Latin America. They lived quietly in their community. The other side of Market Street was the other downtown San Jose, where the major department stores were, where the white folks lived. Well, as you all know, during the late 60s and early 70s, there was white flight during major cities in the United States, and it happened right here in San Jose, too. people started moving out to the suburbs. So San Jose's downtown, not the Mexican downtown, San Jose's downtown started to die. So the city council decided as early as 1962 to redevelop downtown so it could be this robust downtown again. And guess what they did? They completely tore down the Mexican community. Gone, mowed it down. So today, you see the Center for Performing Arts, the Children's Discovery Museum, the Tech Museum, the Fairmont Hotel. All of that stuff used to be Mexican neighborhoods. And Market Street was a thriving Mexican-American downtown. So what's the common thread in all these stories? Here's what the common thread is. Every time the Mexican-American and Mexican community in San Jose got a boost up, the structurally racist community brought us right back down. So I had said in the prologue that beginning in the 50s, the community wanted to create their own cultural center. There was an organization called La Comisión de Herencia Mexicana, which was a part of the Mexican consulate. And they came up with an idea to build a cultural center. So they bought a house near the old Del Monte plant. And they bought some property, but they couldn't raise the money to make it happen, so it never continued. In the 1960s, the president of that organization printed in El Excentrico magazine. I don't know if those of you are old enough to remember the Excentricos, a little magazine about this big. Dr. Ramon Martinez likes to call it the Facebook of the Latino community. I'm not making a mess here. The Facebook of the Latino community. And he wrote in Excentrico this grand vision for a Mexican village that was going to have a town square, a church that anchored the town square, and shops and arts and culture that never left the pages of the magazine. And then in the 1970s, a group of Mexican-American businessmen created something called the Mexican-American Chamber of Commerce. And they wanted to come up with an Olvera Street type venue downtown. And they got a little attention from the city. As a matter of fact, the first Latino, first Mexican-American ever elected to the San Jose City Council was a man named Al Garza. And Al Garza said, yes, I'm going to support you. But they couldn't go any further than that. The city said, nah, we don't want to do that. And the idea died. So, in 1980, things started to change. For the first time in history, San Jose had what's called district elections. That's what we have today. The council member represents District 7. Before 1980, it was a large election system, which meant that everybody in the city voted for the city council. And I ran some numbers, and up until 1980, 84%, I'm going to say that again, 84% of city council members elected in San Jose came from the Rose Garden and Willow Cliff.
White males.
Yeah, all right.
So the movement to change to district elections started in East San Jose. Because they're saying, we don't even have streetlights, we don't even have paved roads. We need representation. So they created this huge movement that gathered steam nationwide, citywide. In 1978, the voters agreed and said, yes, let's do it. 1980 was the first election, and the second Latino/Latina, the first Latina Mexican-American to be elected to the city council was a woman named Blanca Alvarado. 7 years after Blanca took office, she and the mayor of San Jose, his name was Tom McHenry, came up with this idea to have cultural gardens throughout the city, like the Japanese Friendship Gardens. A place where each of the community's cultures could celebrate in a gardens, park-like setting. And in their memo in 1987, they said, we're going to start with the oldest community, the Mexican-American community, and the newest, which is the Vietnamese community. Those are going to be the first two cultural gardens to come up. So Blanca gathered a group of people and community leaders, and I interviewed a few of those people that were at the very, very beginning. And one of the first things they said, which is straight up Raza, we don't want any meditative gardens like the Japanese friendship gardens. We want a place where we could have music and food and dance and color. So they said, we got another idea. And the fight was on. So what happened then was from 1987, when the idea came up, until 1999, 12 years, there was this struggle, both internally and externally, to bring the Mexican Heritage Plaza to life. It started as a gardens project where the city, or the redevelopment agency of the city, would contribute $6 million, and the community created an organization called the Mexican Heritage Corporation, needed to raise $3 million. We're talking early 90s, that's a lot of money. When I talked to a lot of the founders, they were telling me they didn't think that the city thought they could really raise that money. But they did. And there's a fantastic story about how they raised the first $1 million. And I don't know if I have time, but it's a fantastic story. And I'll get back to that in a second. So they raised the $3 million. So now the city's like, oh boy, we gotta do something. Well, it went from a gardens and a plaza to we need a gardens, a plaza, and classroom space. And then we need a gardens and plaza and gallery space. And we need a theater, a full theater. Oh, and we need this community hall where people can have events. If you can all picture those things in your mind right now, those were coming, they were coming ideas in like crazy. So there was three major problems with all this. A, the city's redevelopment agency, which was going to post the most money. Remember, they started at 6. Just for the record, they finished with $32 million. They fought every inch of the way not to do this. So there was a lot of internal institutional problems. I go through it in detail, using documentary evidence like memos, letters, newspaper articles, and they fought it tooth and nail. The second group that was causing them some problems was within our own community. Our own community put up a big fight, a big fight. And what they did is they solicited the support of a Latino columnist, and he took and ran with it. So between the years 1992 and it opened in 1999, or actually late 1998 is when the city finally allocated the last $25 million. It was a day-to-day fight to maintain the structure and maintain the vision of the plaza. It's a fascinating story, and it's an amazing story. It's a story of resilience, it's a story of perseverance, and it's a story too, and I say this in the book, of the Latino community turning the paradigm of accessing public resources upside down. Because up until that point, at least in San Jose, the way to get resources was to protest, was to march, and get on people's cases until we forced them to give us something. This organization, led by Blanca and the leaders of the Mexican Heritage Corporation, turned that model upside down. They used their political skills, their political relationships, their knowledge of the system to get a supermajority of city council to vote for $32 million they gave. And it's a fantastic story. And I don't know if I have about a minute and a half, I just want to tell this story, because this is a great story. So I'm going to tell you the story about how it was told to me, the oral history. And then I'll tell you a little bit about my research journey to find out the truth. Right? So here's the story. Mexican Heritage Corporation has to raise $3 million. Where are they going to get that? So they do like a capital campaign, and they raise 33,000. They got a long way to go, right? They got a long way to go. So they get PG&E to pony up 50 grand. Ooh, that's a big check. That's $83,000. They got a long way to go. So using their political understanding of how the system works, they decided to ask Congress for an earmark. Do you all know what an earmark is? Some people derisively call it pork. That's a big chunk of money that Congress members have, and it comes out of a certain committee that they pass it out like playing cards to bring home what they call bring home the bacon to the community. Bridges, huge parks, stadiums, all those things have pork money. In fact, San Jose International, the Norman Mineta San Jose International Airport, Norman Mineta, who's a member of Congress, got a lot of federal pork for the airport. And so the Mexican Heritage Corporation just thought, let's give this a try. So they did. They asked Congressman Mineta, and Congressman, a guy named Don Edwards at the time, can you help us get some pork? Right? And so it was Don Edwards' district, and Don Edwards, it's actually the district that's represented by Zoe Lofgren now. And Zoe Lofgren was one of his staff members, by the way. And so Don Edwards said, I'll carry the bill, but you all have to do one thing. He told Blanca, you need to go to Washington, D.C. and meet with the chairman of the subcommittee on housing and urban development. That's what the pork was. HUD. And so, so Blanca takes the executive director of the Mexican Heritage Corporation with her, and they go to Washington, and they're nervous. And I spoke to both of them. They're the ones that told me the story. They were nervous. Blanca had those of you that know Blanca, she's super eloquent, super articulate, super passionate. So she had her rap down about how she was going to convince the chairman this was important. And the executive director crunched all the numbers. I'm making a mess again here. That's what happens when you're Latino Mexican American. So crunched the numbers. They had everything in place to meet this congressman. They get there. His name is Louis Stokes. He's an African American veteran, seasoned congress member from Cleveland, Ohio. He actually created the Black Congressional Caucus, and he was the chair of the subcommittee on assassinations for Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy. This is a big dog in Washington. And so Blanca and the executive director, his name is Pete Gallo, walk into the chairman's office. They're ready to go with their rap, their program. They're getting ready to rock and roll it. And Blanca starts talking, and the congressman politely interrupts her and says, I know why you're here. And if Mr. Edwards and Mr. Mineta want this, consider it done. Oh, by the way, y'all want to take a picture? So I thought it was a beautiful story. So I tracked it down, and sure enough, I found Louis Stokes. I found the committee's documents for the year 1992-93, and the committee signed the bill. I put the bill to the President of the United States, George H.W. Bush at the time, and he signed the HUD subcommittee bill, and the Mexican Heritage Corporation got $1 million for the Mexican Heritage Plaza. They turned that whole thing upside down, and they made it work for the community. It's an amazing story. If you haven't bought the book, you gotta buy it. It's a little wet once in a while. But that's it. And I'm just, I want to thank Dr. Martinez and the Historical Society again for having the confidence in me to tell this story, because it was an amazing journey for me. It was an amazing journey.
Anyone have any questions for Eddie? Okay, well, be brief, please.
Madam Trustee.
Thank you so much for telling us the story and also writing a book. That's where I met my lovely husband in the ceremony. That's where we got married, and that's where I feel like we live half of our life with all of the events there. A question, and I don't know if it's in the book. I look forward to reading it. I want to keep the highlight because Mexican Heritage Plaza is an amazing place. And I also, as a current leader in my community, continuing and knowing that I come from, giants like Blanca Alvarado and all the others that open doors, including Picadillo, they both continue to do so much. But knowing, and knowing that we had that money, that we had that corporation. I was young at the time, but I also know that we had matzah, and we had all of these things, right? I'm not saying anything that y'all don't know, those of you that have been here before. I also know that something happened, and so I don't want to go over what happened. I think what I want to learn, because last time we had a big win for the East Side community as well, to reopen matzah. And so I want to learn from what happened, and I don't expect you to answer it, but maybe in the future, so that we don't let Mexican corporation die again, places like matzah close again, that leaders in our community ensure that nothing like that, when we have assets like that we never let them close down on behalf of our future generations.
That's great. I can answer that, kind of. And here's what it is. The book ends on September 9th, 1999. That's the grand opening of the plaza. But I do an epilogue, about a 6-page epilogue. Pretty much kind of like what's happened since. And there's a very fascinating story, and I'm going to go through it quickly now. So and by the way, I need to point out that Elena wrote this, by the way. I'm not ignoring you, Elena. I just have to get to the right time. Elena was the executive director at one time of the Mexican Heritage Plaza and the Mexican Heritage Corporation. So, right. I wasn't ignoring you, Elena. I was trying to fit it in.
I didn't feel ignored, Eddie. I have 2 stories to tell you afterwards that I think might be a nice little nugget.
Okay, so here was, as the building was starting to get built, and there's momentum on building the buildings. There was a lot of discussion in the city council about how to pay for maintenance and operations, right? Because that's a big chunk of it. And the city hired a consulting firm from the East Coast, and the guy's name was Thomas Wolfe. He had a little bow tie and tweed. He thought he was bad, and he probably was in the bigger circles.
And in the East Coast.
And he didn't get along with anybody. But as I was doing my research, I was looking through his report. He recommended that the city contribute $2.4 million over 5 years until the corporation got on its feet. And the city refused. The city said, you're on your own now. And if anybody works in nonprofit, you know that maintenance and operation dollars are hard to come by. They're not as easy to get as program money. So within 2, 3, 4 years of the plaza opening, they were already behind the 8 ball. They were in a huge deficit, $740,000 to be clear. So at that time is when the city said, okay, that's it, you're out, Mexican Heritage Corporation, you don't know what you're doing. And so they went out to bid, and now we have the School of Arts and Culture, which is doing a magnificent job. But here's what no one's told anybody. They get an annual subsidy still, 10 years after they've gotten here. The city either A, got smart and said, we need to help, or B, wanted to see the Mexican Heritage Corporation fail. I don't know the answer to that. That's going to take another historian to look at. But to me, it's those kind of things that you'll see throughout the book, about this sleight of hand, this pulling fast ones, and for 11 years, 12 years, the Mexican Heritage Corporation had to operate it under that environment. It was very challenging. So does that answer your question? Yeah, it's crazy. By the way, the Councilman Doan here is part of the group that's smart enough to continue providing some operations and maintenance costs for the School of Arts and Culture.
Good, Garcia. Thank you, Mr. Garcia, for all your research and everything. You touched on an aspect that some of the information was false and so forth. How did you get to the truth, and how difficult was it to get that, peel those onions away?
I'm not only do I have a history degree, I'm a avid history and biography reader. And I want to give a lot of credit to my professor when I talked to her. Her name was Professor Irma Eichhorn. She passed away years ago. But she used to say, if a document exists, you can find it. If it doesn't exist, you're not going to find it. But if it exists, you got to find it. So you got to turn every page. So, for example, Blanca's, I don't know if you all know this, but Blanca Alvarado's personal papers are at the San Jose State Special Collections. It's like 10 boxes of files. I literally sat there day after day, turning every single page to find out every nugget of information I can. Fernando Sassueta, who's the founding chairman of the Mexican Heritage Corporation, he said, he asked me the other day where he should donate his papers.